Temi was running late for her interview and already hoping she would meet up when she stumbled upon a man dying, or so she thought. Minho's knees buckled as two security guards caught him before he hit the pavement. Get the car. We're taking him to the hospital. The young man by his side was panicking, but Temi immediately noticed something the others seemed to miss. His face was pale, his hands were trembling, and from the way he was struggling to focus, she knew something was wrong with his blood sugar. Wait, she called, hurrying toward them. One of the guards stepped in front of her. Stay back. I have something that might help after his blood sugar is stabilized. She opened the pastry box clutched against her chest. Inside was a small, beautifully decorated pastry. Absolutely not, the young man by his side snapped. He's diabetic. Really? Then this must be fate. She held it out. The young man stared at her without responding. This pastry is specially formulated with very little sugar. I spent months getting the recipe right. It's perfect for diabetic patients. Minho slowly lifted his head. His eyes landed on the pastry. And for the first time in years, he desired to eat the food of another woman willingly. Give it to me. Sir, I said give it to me. She handed it over. He took one cautious bite, I see, then stopped. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The billionaire who had spent years surrounded by private chefs, nutritionists, and doctors looked at the pastry as though he'd just discovered something impossible. Where did you get this? I made it. You? He asked in disbelief. She nodded. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the time and panicked. Oh my God, my interview. She grabbed her pastry box. I'm sorry. I have to go. Before he could ask another question, she hurried toward the towering building across the street, the same building where she was about to sit through an interview that would change her life. Unfortunately, not in the way she hoped. 20 minutes later, she walked out of the building with tears burning behind her eyes. Rejected again. We are sorry, but you have no experience, and your designs do not meet the standard of our company, they had told her. Temi tried not to cry, but when she heard the whispers of a group of employers mocking her for her skin tone and lack of Korean lineage, the tears flowed freely. She never thought she would be judged this way. What she didn't know was that the man she had just helped was sitting upstairs in the very same building. And he wasn't thinking about the hospital. He was thinking about her pastry. Find her, he ordered. His assistant hesitated. Sir, who? The woman who gave me that pastry. His assistant looked worried. Sir, are you sure we don't have to go to the hospital? Can a pastry really heal you? Minho threw him a glare. It has. I can feel it. His assistant walked away quickly to find out about Temi. An hour later, he appeared with a file with a worried expression on his face. Sir? Minho looked up. What? She was one of today's interview candidates. He opened the file. There was her photograph, with her name, and across the top of the page were 3 words. Application, rejected. His eyes hardened. Why? The assistant swallowed. Your executive said she wasn't suitable for the company. The billionaire looked down at the half-eaten pastry beside him, then back to her photograph. For the first time that day, something resembling a smile touched his lips. Bring her back. But, sir, his voice turned cold. I don't care who rejected her. He pushed the file across the desk. I want to know why the best pastry chef I've ever met was turned away from my company. A young woman goes on an adventure in Korea, daring to make a difference. But what happens when the odds are against her? Does she persist or succumb to the pressure in a foreign land? Before we go ahead, kindly hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know your favorite Korean and African pastry and why. I'll be reading every one of them. 3 years earlier, Temi had arrived in Seoul with 2 suitcases, a scholarship letter, and a dream that most people around her thought was too ambitious. She wanted to become a pastry chef. Not just any pastry chef. She wanted to create desserts that could tell stories. Growing up in Nigeria, Temi had always been fascinated by food. Her mother could turn ordinary ingredients into something unforgettable, and Temi had spent countless afternoons watching her cook, memorizing the way she combined spices without measuring a single thing. But pastry was different. It was precise, elegant, almost scientific. When she discovered Korean pastry culture, she became fascinated by the delicate textures, beautiful presentation, and careful balance of flavors. She began studying everything she could find. But she never wanted to abandon where she came from. Instead, she wanted to bring both worlds together. She experimented with ginger, coconut, hibiscus, plantain, honey, peanuts, and Nigerian spices, combining them with Korean ingredients such as black sesame, red bean, yuzu, and matcha. Some experiments were terrible. Some were almost inedible. But occasionally, she created something extraordinary. And those moments kept Temi going. Her first few months in Korea were anything but easy. She struggled with the language. She struggled to find people willing to take her seriously. And when she began applying to prestigious pastry companies, the rejections came quickly. Sometimes they were polite. Sometimes they were vague. And sometimes the meaning behind the words was impossible to miss. She learned to swallow her disappointment. Then she would go home, tie her apron around her waist, and start baking again. Eventually, Temi stopped waiting for someone to give her permission. She rented a tiny storefront in a quiet neighborhood and opened her own bakery. She called it Mimi's Sweetness. It wasn't impressive. The sign above the door was modest. The kitchen was barely large enough for 2 people to move around comfortably, and the tables inside didn't match. But everything she sold came from her hands. Her signature pastry was a soft, buttery creation filled with a delicate black sesame cream and a sweet Nigerian-inspired ginger coconut filling. She called it the first journey. It was the pastry she had been carrying in her box the morning she went to her interview, the pastry that had ended up in the hands of a stranger on the street. The stranger she didn't know was the most powerful man behind the company that had just rejected her. And after leaving her interview that afternoon, Temi went home convinced that she had lost another opportunity. She never imagined the man she had helped would spend the rest of the day thinking about her. By evening, the stranger knew where Temi worked. Min-ho found the name of her bakery. He knew how long she had lived in Korea. He even knew how many times she had applied to the company. But he didn't tell her any of that. Instead, the next afternoon, he walked into Mimi's Sweetness alone. Well, almost alone. A black sedan was parked across the street, and a man sat behind the wheel, watching the entrance. Inside, Temi was arranging pastries behind the counter when the bell above the door rang. She looked up and froze. Her hands stopped moving. It was him, the man from yesterday, the one who had nearly collapsed, the first person to taste her pastry. "You," she said, surprised. His lips curved slightly. "Me?" She glanced toward the door. "Are you feeling better?" "Much better." "Good." She smiled, visibly relieved. "I was worried about you." Min-ho's expression shifted. Nobody had asked him that in a long time, not without wanting something afterward. He stepped closer to the counter. "I came to return something." Temi frowned. "You don't owe me anything." Min-ho looked at the display case. "I think I do." He pointed toward the pastry. "That one." She laughed. "You came all the way here for a pastry?" "I came to taste more of your sweetness," he mumbled. She blinked. "What?" "The pastry." "Oh." She smiled. "I thought you liked it." "I did." "Then I'll give you one." He shook his head. 2. Her heart leaped at the fact that someone was buying her little invention. "You're very demanding for someone who almost fainted in front of me yesterday." For the first time, he smiled properly. It was brief, but she noticed it. Minho took a seat near the window while she prepared his order. As she placed the plate in front of him, he studied it carefully. "You made this?" "Yes. You do realize that I'm diabetic, right?" Temi rolled her eyes. "Yes, sir. Your friend made that very clear yesterday." She leaned against the counter. "Don't worry. This barely has any sugar. It is the best puff-puff infused with coconut and red bean." Minho nodded, still looking at the pastry in front of him. "You're hesitating." He looked at her. Temi continued. "If you doubt my pastry, then you don't need to." Minho bit into it. The burst of flavor filled his tongue, sweet but not sugar-sweet. It had a unique taste. As someone who has to watch what he consumed, he was quite pleased with this food. Maybe he didn't have to stay away from pastries after all. "How is it?" Temi asked, her hands clasped together in anticipation. He lifted his eyes to hers, and for a moment stopped. Minho couldn't tell if it was the food in his mouth or the woman in front of him, but his heart skipped. "Sweet," he whispered. Temi's face brightened. "I know, it's just perfect, right?" He nodded and took another bite. "This is one of my childhood delicacies from Nigeria. In case you can't tell, I'm Nigerian." Minho hid a small smile, enjoying her ramble in the cutest way possible. "But the red bean isn't. I'm trying to infuse Nigerian and Korean pastries to create something unique." "I know." He wiped his mouth with a paper towel when the door chimed and another customer came in. Temi gave him an apologetic look and walked to serve the new customer. Minho spent 20 minutes watching her serve each customer like they were the best thing that had happened to her life. When she was finally free, he stood up and walked over, handing over his card. "This creation of yours, they are different," he complimented her. "Good different." He arched an eyebrow. "You sound confident." She shrugged. "Because I know I'm good." She took his payment and started packing a new order. Sadly, talent doesn't mean people will give you a chance, especially in a foreign country. Something about that answer stayed with him. Minho had spent his entire life surrounded by people who wanted his approval. Yet this woman didn't seem interested in impressing him. She didn't even ask his name. Temi handed his card back to him, along with a small box. "For tomorrow." He looked at it. "You're giving me another?" "Consider it a thank you for coming back." He stared at the box, then at her. "What if I come back again?" Temi smiled. "Then I'll make you another." He nodded. "I'll hold you to that." He walked out. The moment the door closed behind him, Temi shook her head. She had no idea who he was. To her, he was simply the mysterious man who had nearly collapsed due to low sugar and somehow become her most interesting customer. Across the street, Minho entered the waiting car. His assistant, Do-yoon, glanced at him through the mirror. "Back to the office?" Minho looked down at the small pastry box in his hand. "Yes." He paused. "Clear my afternoon tomorrow. I'm coming back." And this time, he wasn't coming back for the pastry. Not entirely. 3 days later, Temi received another email. She almost deleted it without opening it. Then she saw the company name. The same company that had rejected her that morning. For a moment, she simply stared at the screen. They wanted another interview. Temi laughed bitterly. Seriously? She had spent years trying to get through their doors. Now, after rejecting her, they suddenly wanted her back. She closed the email. Then she opened it again. There was no explanation, no apology. Just another invitation to interview for a pastry development position. She deleted it. She had nothing against the company itself, but she knew what had happened in that interview room. She knew what they had meant when they said she didn't fit their brand. Temi had worked too hard to be treated like someone who needed to prove that her skin belonged in the room. So she chose herself. She didn't know that, somewhere across Seoul, the company's owner, Minho, was sitting in his office waiting for her answer. His assistant, Do-yoon, entered quietly. She declined. He looked up from his laptop. She declined? Yes. For some reason, that answer irritated him. Not because she had refused the position, because he couldn't understand why. He had never had to convince anyone to accept an opportunity. People usually fought to get close to him, yet this woman had turned down his company without hesitation. Send it again. Do-yoon hesitated. Sir? Not as an interview. He paused. Tell them to ask her to come in for a private discussion. But Temi declined that too. And somehow, that only made him more curious. After that, he began appearing at Mimi's sweetness. At first, once every few days, then almost every afternoon. Sometimes he ordered 1 pastry, sometimes 2. Sometimes he barely ate anything at all. He simply sat near the window with his coffee and watched. Temi noticed. You're here again. He looked up from his phone. You noticed? How could I not? She laughed. You sit in the same chair every time. It's a good chair. You've never sat anywhere else. Then it must be the best chair. She shook her head and walked away smiling. He watched her move around the bakery. She was different when she worked. Lighter. She remembered customers' names. She knew which elderly woman preferred less sweetness. She kept an extra pastry aside for the little boy who came home from school every Friday. When a customer couldn't afford everything they had ordered, she quietly removed one item and pretended she had made a mistake with the bill. When a delivery driver came in soaked from the rain, she handed him a hot drink without charging him. She wasn't performing kindness. She simply seemed to live inside it. And the bakery changed whenever she was behind the counter. There was laughter, music, the smell of butter and ginger and hibiscus, the sound of her teasing regular customers. Temi had created a little world where people seemed happier when they walked out than when they walked in. Minho found himself watching her more than his phone. Then one afternoon, Do-yoon called. Sir, your meeting begins in 10 minutes. Minho glanced toward Temi. She was laughing with an elderly customer. Cancel it. There was silence on the other end. Which one? All of them. Sir, you have 3 meetings today. I said cancel them. He put his phone down. He didn't know why he kept doing this. He told himself it was the pastry. It wasn't. It was the way she made the bakery feel alive. It was the way she smiled without calculating who was watching. It was the softness in her voice, the strange happiness that followed her wherever she went. And without realizing it, the most powerful man in the city had begun rearranging his life around a tiny bakery. One afternoon, Temi was serving customers when 2 people walked through the door. A young Korean man and a woman dressed elegantly beside him. Temi's smile disappeared. The man noticed her immediately. Well, look at you. She stiffened. The woman beside him looked around the bakery and laughed. What do you want, Taejin? It was the first time Minho saw Temi act so cold toward another person. This is where you ended up. Taejin smirked. I told you she wouldn't make it, the woman by his side mocked. Temi lowered her eyes. Can I get you something? She tried to act professional, even though the words were getting to her. Nothing. Taejin's gaze traveled around the bakery. So this is your big dream? The woman laughed. I thought you wanted to work for a luxury company. Create something special and all. Temi said nothing. Minho, who was sitting near the window, slowly lowered his phone. Taejin's voice became crueler. You really thought those companies would hire you? Temi's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. You should leave, she forced out. He laughed. Still pretending you're better than everyone? Minho stood, the chair scraping the tiles loudly. The entire bakery seemed to grow quieter. He walked toward the counter and stopped beside Temi. Then, without looking at the couple, he placed one hand gently against her back. She asked you to leave. Taejin stared at him. And who are you? Minho looked at Temi, then back at him. Her boyfriend. Temi's eyes widened. The couple exchanged an uncomfortable glance. Taejin, who had been laughing moments earlier, suddenly seemed less confident. Boyfriend? Yes. Minho's expression remained calm. Is there a problem? There wasn't. Not anymore. The couple left without another word. The moment the door closed, Temi turned toward him. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She looked at him for a moment. Thank you. He nodded. After a brief silence, she sighed. That was my ex. His expression hardened slightly. He was cruel to you. He always thought I wasn't going to amount to anything. She gave a small laugh. Apparently, he still does. Minho looked around the bakery. He was wrong. Temi smiled. Then, almost impulsively, she said, You know what? What? I owe you dinner. He raised an eyebrow. Dinner? Yes, she smiled. Not pastries. Actual dinner, to say thank you for helping me. For the first time all day, something softened in his eyes. I'd like that. All right, but first, let's start with introductions. I'm Temi. She stretched forth her hand. Minho shook her hands. Minho. Neither of them knew it yet. But that simple invitation would be the beginning of something neither of them could walk away from. The restaurant Temi chose was small, warm, and tucked away on a busy street. It wasn't the kind of place someone like him would normally visit. There were no private rooms, no expensive crystal glasses, no bodyguards standing discreetly in corners. Just small wooden tables, steaming bowls, loud conversations, and the delicious smell of Korean spices drifting through the air. Temi looked at Minho apologetically. I know it's not fancy. He glanced around. I didn't ask for fancy. She smiled. Good, because I can't afford fancy, and from your clothes I can tell you're used to such things. That made him laugh. A real chuckle that made her heart fluttered. Temi stared at him for half a second. She had never heard him laugh like that before. It softened his entire face. You should do that more often, she said. Do what? Laugh. His smile faded slightly. Why? Because you look less intimidating. I don't care how I look. She grinned. I do. They ordered their food. For the first few minutes, everything was perfect. Then Minho took his first bite. His expression changed. Temi immediately noticed. What? He reached for his water. This is spicy. She blinked. Spicy? Yes. She tried not to laugh. You're sweating. I am not, he denied quickly. You are. He took another sip of water. Temi burst out laughing. Minho stared at her. You find this amusing? Very. She laughed harder when he reached for the water again. I thought you said you could handle a bit of spice. I can. You're literally fighting for your life. He shook his head, but there was a reluctant smile at the corner of his mouth. Unfortunately, the problem wasn't only the spice. There wasn't much on the menu that fit his dietary restrictions either. Minho tried another dish but barely touched it. Temi's laughter disappeared and her eyes softened. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I invited you here, and I'm enjoying your company. She looked at him. Something about the way he said it made her heart skip again. He wasn't looking at the food anymore. He was looking at her. She quickly looked away. Still, she murmured, you're leaving hungry. He smiled. I'll survive. No. She stood. We're leaving. Minho looked up at her. Where? My apartment. His eyebrow lifted. You're taking me home. She froze. That sounded very wrong. He laughed. She covered her face. Oh my God. For the first time, she saw genuine amusement in his eyes. I meant I'm going to cook for you. I know. Minho was still grinning. Stop looking at me like that. Temi couldn't handle the butterflies in her stomach. Like what? Like you know exactly what I meant. His smile widened, and somehow the awkwardness disappeared. Temi's apartment was small. That was the first thing Minho noticed. Much smaller than the homes he was accustomed to. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt something he hadn't expected. Warmth. There were little plants by the window. Photographs of her family covered one wall. A small shelf held pastry books, family photographs, school trips, and handwritten recipe notebooks. Nothing was expensive, yet everything felt personal. He picked up a framed photograph. Your mother? Temi nodded. My mother and my younger brother. There was pride in her voice. She wanted me to stay in Nigeria. Why didn't you? Because I knew I'd regret it if I didn't try. She smiled faintly. She was scared for me, but she still told me to go. Minho placed the photograph down carefully. I imagine she misses you. She does. Temi turned toward the kitchen. So do I. He watched her for a moment. There was something about seeing her in her own space that made her feel different. More real. At the bakery, she was confident. Here, she was simply Temi. The woman who missed her mother. The woman who had crossed an ocean chasing a dream. The woman who had been rejected so many times and still woke up every morning determined to try again. She prepared a simple meal for him. Grilled fish, vegetables, a small serving of rice, and a homemade ginger and hibiscus drink, carefully prepared with his dietary restrictions in mind. When she placed the plate in front of him, she looked almost nervous. Please don't tell me you don't like it. He took a bite, then another. His eyes softened. This is good. Relief immediately washed over her face. Oh, thank God. He laughed. You were worried? Of course I was. Why? Because you seem impossible to impress. He looked at her. You're wrong. About what? You've already impressed me, Temi. She went quiet. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then Temi looked down at her plate. Eat your food. Minho smiled. Yes, chef. They talked late into the night. For the first time, there were no interruptions. Minho silenced his phone, yet when Do-yoon kept sending messages, he blocked him. He gave her his undivided attention. No business calls, no customers, and definitely no emails. Temi told him about Nigeria, about her mother teaching her to cook, about burning her first batch of pastries, about crying in her tiny apartment after receiving rejection after rejection. She even let her rejection from his company slip. I almost gave up, she admitted. He looked at her. But you didn't. No. She smiled. I couldn't. Why? Because I believe in my pastries. It is their fault for not seeing my talent earlier. Minho didn't know what to say about that, so he stayed quiet, thinking of how to make her accept the job offer again. Also, I don't want to lie to my mum. Her voice softened. She would take the next flight to Korea just to drag me home. Temi shook her head, already imagining the drama her mother would create if she knew how Temi was faring. Seeing she was getting sad, Minho told her about his own family. Not everything, but enough. His father, the expectations, the constant pressure to do better every single time. You make it sound lonely, she said. It is. The honesty in his voice surprised her. She reached across the table and gently touched his hand. You don't have to be alone all the time. He looked down at her hand resting over his, and chest tightened. Nobody touched him like that. Nobody spoke to him like that. They never understood. Not even his friends. He turned his hand slightly, allowing his fingers to brush hers. Neither do you, so I want you to take a chance again. Who knows? Her eyes met his, and something shifted between them. Something neither was ready to name. The next morning, Temi received a surprise. A beautiful garment box arrived at her apartment. Inside was an elegant gown. She stared at it in confusion. There was a small card. "For your next beginning," it read. Her heart fluttered. She knew exactly who had sent it and called him. "You sent me a dress? I thought you might need it," Minho answered. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She smiled. "It's beautiful. So are you." Silence. Temi's cheeks warmed. Was that necessary? Yes. She laughed nervously. "Thank you. Good luck today." She wore the gown to the interview, and this time everything changed. They asked about her recipes, her ideas, her experience, her vision for bringing Nigerian flavors into Korean pastry. And for the first time, nobody looked at her like she was an outsider trying to enter their world. They looked at her like she belonged. By the end of the interview, she was offered the position immediately. The moment she stepped outside, she called Minho to share the good news. "I got it!" Her voice was bursting with excitement. Minho couldn't help smiling, even though he was in a very tiring meeting. "I knew you would. They hired me. I know. How do you know?" He paused. "I can tell when you're going to succeed." She laughed. "Thank you for giving me the courage to try again." Then she added, "And I'm going to send you pastries every day." I would love nothing more, but life became busy. Very busy. Temi threw herself into her new job, while Minho returned to his endless meetings and responsibilities. Days became weeks. They barely saw each other. Still, every afternoon, Do-yoon appeared at Mimi's sweetness. "I'm here for his box." Temi always smiled. "Again?" "He looks forward to it." Her heart warmed every time she heard that. She began making things specifically for him. Less sugar. Less spice. More of the flavors he liked. And every evening, when the box arrived at his office, he would open it carefully. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he found a tiny handwritten note tucked inside. "Don't skip lunch. Drink water. You sounded tired yesterday." Minho kept every note. He told himself it was because they were thoughtful, but deep down he knew the truth. He missed her. One evening, he finally couldn't take it anymore and called her. "Are you busy tonight?" Temi smiled when she heard his voice. "For you? Maybe not." His heart gave an unfamiliar little pull. "Then have dinner with me." When she arrived, he was already waiting. He stood when she entered. For several seconds, he simply looked at her. She noticed. "What?" She looked down at her dress. "Nothing. You're staring." "I know." She laughed softly. They sat down. But this time, neither of them talked about pastries. He reached across the table. "I've been thinking about us." Her smile faded into nervousness. "Us. Yes." He took a slow breath. "I don't want to keep pretending I come to your bakery because I like your pastries." She smiled. "You do like my pastries. I love them. See? But that's not why I keep coming back." Her heart began beating faster. He held her gaze. "I like being around you." She didn't speak. "I like your laugh. I like how you take care of people. I like how you make every place feel warmer." His voice softened. "And somewhere along the way, I stopped looking forward to the pastries." He reached for her hand. "I started looking forward to you." Temi's eyes glistened. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything." She looked down at their hands, then back at him. A shy smile slowly appeared. "I like being around you too." His fingers tightened gently around hers. "Then be with me." She swallowed. "As your girlfriend?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" She hesitated. "I'm a black woman, not really the beauty standard. You're the most beautiful woman I have laid my eyes on." Minho cut her words. Temi felt her smile grow wider. Yes. Minho sighed in relief. And for the first time since arriving in Korea, Temi felt like maybe, just maybe, her life was finally beginning to look the way she'd always dreamed it could. Being Minho's girlfriend changed Temi's life in ways she hadn't expected. Not because he showered her with expensive gifts. He rarely did. He seemed to understand that she valued things differently. Instead, he gave her his time. He would sit inside her bakery after closing, sleeves rolled up, watching her clean the counter while they talked about their day. Sometimes he helped her carry boxes. Sometimes he simply sat there while she tested new recipes. And sometimes, when she was tired, he would quietly take the cloth from her hands and finish cleaning. "You're terrible at this," she would tease. He would glance at her. "I own several businesses. That doesn't mean you know how to clean." He would shake his head. But she always caught the little smile he tried to hide. She loved that side of him. The world seemed to fear him. Yet around her he was different. Softer, patient, almost playful. And the more time they spent together, the more she realized that the mysterious man she'd met on her way to her interview wasn't as cold as he first appeared. He had simply learned how to hide his softness. She became one of the few people who could see it. Minho also became fiercely protective of his health. Or rather, she became fiercely protective of it. Temi monitored what he ate. She reminded him to take his medication. She refused to let him skip meals. Once, when he told her he had been too busy to eat lunch, she appeared at his apartment with a box of food. "You're impossible." He looked at the food. "You brought all this?" "Yes. You know I have people who can cook." "I don't care." She pointed at him. "You're going to eat." He smiled. "Yes, chef." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't call me that when you're trying to distract me." It worked. She tried not to smile, failed woefully. And he loved that. He loved how easily she brought warmth into rooms that had always felt cold. He loved the way she cared, without expecting anything in return. He loved that she still treated him like a man, rather than a bank account. And somewhere between late-night conversations and early morning lovemaking, his feelings became deeper than he was prepared to admit. Temi felt it too. She was falling in love with him. She just didn't know how far he would go to keep her in his life. Weeks passed. Temi's career was growing. She was finally being taken seriously at the company. Her recipes were receiving attention. Her colleagues were beginning to praise her creativity. And she believed she had finally earned the chance she'd spent years fighting for. She never questioned why things had suddenly changed. She didn't know that the man she loved had been quietly watching her progress from behind closed doors. She didn't know that executives who once dismissed her now received direct instructions never to interfere with her work. She didn't know how many people inside the company were already beginning to whisper about the mysterious woman who had captured the attention of their powerful chairman. And most importantly, she still didn't know who he really was. One afternoon, the assistant arrived at her office. "I'm here for his pastry." Temi smiled. "Give me a second." She carefully pulled out a small white box. "This one is his." Do-yoon had already picked up the wrong one from her desk. "Sorry," Temi laughed. "Don't take that one. That's a new recipe I'm still testing." Do-yoon apologized and hurried away with the correct box. Temi watched him leave. Then she looked down at the other pastry box. Something felt wrong. She had mixed up the boxes. Do-yoon had carried the wrong pastry which had lots of sugar. Temi panicked. Couldn't let the wrong box leave the building. So she grabbed the right box and hurried after him. By the time she reached downstairs, Do-yoon was already walking, but not outside. He took a turn toward the elevator at the opposite side of the building. "Wait!" He didn't hear her, and the elevator was already closing. Temi frowned. Why was he going upstairs? She watched the elevator move to the top floor, before taking the next elevator. The elevator climbed. Floor after floor. Then the numbers stopped on the top floor. When the doors opened, Temi stepped out. The atmosphere immediately changed. It was quieter. 2 security officers stood near the hallway. A woman behind a desk looked at her suspiciously. "Can I help you?" Temi suddenly felt nervous. She looked toward the hallway. Do-yoon had already disappeared. "I need to see my boyfriend." The secretary raised an eyebrow. "Your boyfriend?" "Yes." "Who is he?" Temi's mind raced. She had no idea why she felt something was off, but decided to try her luck. "I'm here to see Min-ho." The secretary studied her face. Then her expression softened. "Oh," she smiled. "You're her." Temi blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The president's girlfriend." Temi's stomach dropped. "President?" Before she could ask what she meant, the secretary pointed toward the hallway. "He is in a meeting. Please have a seat. I'll let him know that you're here." Temi stared at her. "The president?" she whispered again. "Yes." Another secretary nearby laughed softly. "You're lucky, you know." Temi turned. "Lucky?" The woman smiled. "If it weren't for the president, you probably wouldn't have gotten your position here." The words hit her like a slap. Her breathing stopped. "What did you say?" The secretary looked confused by her reaction. "I mean, everyone knows President Han personally approved your hiring." Temi's face went pale. Personally approved? Her mind began racing. The second interview, the gown, his encouragement. His insistence that she accept the position, the sudden offer, the way everything had changed overnight. She remembered him telling her, "Because you're good." She remembered believing him. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. A door opened behind them. Everyone immediately stood. The secretary straightened, while the security guard stepped aside. And then Min-ho walked out, the man she had loved. The man who had sat in her tiny apartment and eaten her food. The man she thought was simply a wealthy, private businessman. Everyone bowed. "Good afternoon, President." Temi couldn't move. Min-ho looked up. His eyes found hers. The color drained from his face. "Temi." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're the CEO?" He didn't reply. She stared at him. Then at the office behind him. Then at the people bowing around her. Her heart was breaking before he had even said a word. Because suddenly, she didn't know what hurt more. That he had lied about who he was. Or that he might have been the reason she finally got the job she had spent years trying to earn. Temi stared at him. The man standing in front of her was no longer simply the quiet businessman who had eaten pastries at her bakery. He was the man everyone in the building feared. The president, the owner, the person whose name appeared on every document bearing the company's seal. And apparently, the person who had made sure she got the job. Her lips parted, but no words came. He took one step toward her. "Temi, let me explain." She stepped back. "No." Her voice trembled. "You don't get to explain." He stopped. The secretaries around them suddenly became very interested in their desks. Temi looked at him with tears gathering in her eyes. "You knew." He said nothing. "You knew who I was." "Yes." The answer broke something inside her. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You knew from the beginning?" "I found out after I tasted your pastry." Her eyes filled. "And you still came to my bakery?" "Yes." "You knew I had been rejected by your company?" "Yes." "And when you told me to accept the interview, I wanted you to have another chance." She shook her head. "Another chance?" Her voice rose. "I spent years trying to get through that door." She pointed at the door. He stepped closer. "I know." "No, you don't." She wiped away a tear. "You don't know how long and hard I worked just to get that interview. You absolutely do not know what it feels like to sit in front of people and have them look at you like you're already wrong before you've even opened your mouth. He looks stricken. I know they treated you unfairly, but you knew. Her voice cracked. You knew who I was when you met me, and you let me believe you were just some man who liked my pastries. She stepped back. I never wanted to deceive you, but you did. Silence. That word landed harder than anything else. Deceived. He had faced betrayal from business partners, enemies, family members, people who had tried to overthrow him. But somehow, hearing that word from her hurt more than all of it. Temi looked toward the elevator. I need to go. Min-ho reached for her hand. She pulled away. Please. He immediately let go. I'm sorry. She shook her head. I don't want your apology right now. Then she walked away. That night, Temi didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. His name was still at the top of her screen. He had called 6 times. She hadn't answered. Messages kept appearing. Please let me explain. I should have told you. I know you're hurt. Then another. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. She stared at that one message for a long time tonight, then turned her phone face down. Because the truth was worse than she wanted to admit. She missed him, even after everything. She missed his voice, his stupid teasing, the way he looked at her when she talked about food, the way he always waited until she finished speaking. She hated that her heart still wanted him, but love didn't make the betrayal disappear. The next morning, she went to the company, not because she wanted to see him. She wanted to resign. Temi walked into the office carrying a letter. Her supervisor looked shocked. Temi, what's this? My resignation. But why? She smiled sadly. I need to know that whatever I achieve belongs to me. The supervisor didn't know what to say. Before she could leave, the elevator doors opened. Min-ho stepped out. He had clearly come straight from a meeting. His eyes immediately found her. Temi? She looked away. He walked toward her. Please don't resign. She handed him the letter. I can't stay. You can. No. He looked at the paper but didn't take it. You think I gave you this job because I wanted you to owe me something. She said nothing. I gave you the opportunity because I knew you deserved it. That doesn't make it better. I know. His voice was quiet. I know it doesn't. She finally looked at him. He looked exhausted. Not like the powerful chairman everyone feared. Just a man who was terrified of losing someone. I should have told you, he continued. Why didn't you? She crossed her arms. I was afraid. That surprised her. Afraid of what? He swallowed. That if you knew who I was, you'd stop treating me like me. Her expression softened for half a second. But you didn't give me the choice. He nodded. You're right. He took a breath. So I'm giving it to you now. He reached into his pocket and placed a small card on the table. Your position is no longer under my direct authority. She frowned. What? I've transferred oversight of your department to an independent board. She stared at him. No special treatment, no private instructions, no decisions about your career will come through me. He looked directly into her eyes. If you stay because you're talented. She looked down at the card. And if I leave, his jaw tightened. I'll respect it. That was the hardest thing he'd ever said. Because every instinct in him wanted to command her to stay. But he knew love wasn't ownership. So he stepped back. You don't owe me anything, Temi. She looked at him. Not your career. He paused. Not your forgiveness. His voice cracked slightly. And not your love. Her eyes filled with tears. He turned away, and for the first time she understood. He wasn't trying to control the outcome. He was willing to lose her. She didn't return to the company that day, or the next. But 3 days later, she walked back through the doors. Not because he was the chairman, not because he loved her, but because she had finally realized something. Her talent had existed before him. Her dreams had existed before him, theirs. And no one could take those away. She stayed, but she kept her distance. Minho accepted it. He didn't pressure her, didn't send flowers, didn't send expensive gifts, didn't show up at her apartment unannounced. Instead, he waited, and slowly she began noticing the changes. Her colleagues treated her fairly. Her work was judged on its own merit. Nobody was allowed to dismiss her because of her race. And when one executive made a disparaging remark about her background, the chairman didn't personally intervene. He simply made sure the company's policies protected her. She realized he was finally doing what he should have done from the beginning, giving her power over her own life. Then came the announcement. The company's biggest international product launch was approaching, and the pastry Temi had created, the same low-sugar pastry that had first caught Minho's attention, was chosen as the centerpiece. Her creation, her recipe with her name attached to it. The launch night arrived. The ballroom was filled with executives, investors, celebrities, journalists, and international buyers. Temi stood backstage, staring at the enormous screen displaying her pastry. Her hands trembled. She thought about Nigeria, her first failed recipe, first rejection, and tiny bakery. The years she had spent wondering whether she belonged. Then the lights came on. Her pastry was unveiled. The room erupted in applause. Temi covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. She had done it. Not because someone had rescued her, not because she had become someone's girlfriend, but because she had believed in herself. Then she heard footsteps behind her and turned. Minho was standing there. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled. "You did it." She smiled through her tears. "We did." He shook his head. "No." He stepped closer. "You did." She stared at him, and suddenly she understood how much had changed. He had once been the reason she didn't know whether her success was truly hers. Now he was standing beside her, making sure she knew it belonged entirely to her. He reached into his pocket. Her eyes widened. "Wait." He dropped to one knee. The room went silent. Temi covered her mouth. "Are you serious?" He looked up at her. "I have spent my entire life believing that everything worth having could be bought." He opened the ring box. "I was wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "The best thing that ever happened to me walked into my life, carrying a box of pastries and didn't even know who I was." She laughed through her tears. He continued, "You taught me that love isn't about owning someone." He held out the ring. "It's about giving them the freedom to choose you." He looked around the room. Hundreds of people were watching, but his eyes never left hers. "So I'm asking you now, with no position, no company, and no power between us to choose me." His voice softened. "Just me, Temi." He swallowed. "Will you choose me?" She was crying now, not from pain, but from tears of joy. The truth was that she had forgiven a long time ago, but didn't know how to approach him. Temi stepped toward him. "Yes." The room erupted. He stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then she threw her arms around him. Minho held her tightly. And for once, the billionaire who commanded an empire didn't care who was watching. He kissed the woman he loved. Behind them, her pastry continued to appear across enormous screens. The pastry they once told her Korea would never accept. The pastry born from two cultures. The pastry created by a woman who had once been rejected because of the color of her skin. Now it is being celebrated around the world. And beside her stood the man who had once hidden his identity because he feared she would see his power before she saw his heart. He had learned to love her without owning her. She had learned that being given an opportunity didn't diminish the talent that made her worthy of it. And together they built something neither of them had expected. A love that began with one pastry, a dream that survived rejection, and a woman who refused to let anyone convince her that she didn't belong. The end.